Why did Taehyung suddenly stop isolating himself after training? What was in Jungkook's message that made him walk out of the barracks with renewed fire in his eyes? And why are soldiers still whispering about what they saw that day? The story at first glance might appear simple. A struggling idol, now a soldier pushed to his physical and emotional limits, is comforted by a friend. But beneath the surface, this is not just about a message. It's about a moment that broke him, and a word that rebuilt him. What no one expected, however, was what that message truly revealed. Not just to Taehyung, but to everyone around him. For days, whispers had begun to spread quietly across the base. Whispers that something wasn't right with Kim Taehyung. Ever since the second phase of tactical training began, he had grown quieter. Not in the usual way of soldiers forced into discipline, but in a way that seemed to echo something deeper. Every break, every meal, every march, he lingered a little longer at the edges. And then one day he just stopped speaking altogether. Was it the pressure of being V of BTS, in the middle of a brutal military environment? Was it the suffocating silence from the outside world? Or was it something far more personal, something only one person knew? No one could quite pinpoint when the shift happened. Some say it was after a particularly harsh field training day, when Taehyung collapsed beside his bunk and didn't get up for hours, despite being awake. Others say it started earlier, the moment the letters from family and fans started slowing down, reminding him just how far away he truly was. But then, just as quietly as the darkness had crept in, something changed. It was a Saturday afternoon. The base was unusually still after a morning of heavy drills. The sky hung low with the weight of late spring humidity, and the air inside the barracks clung to skin like damp wool. Taehyung sat on the edge of his bed, staring blankly at the window. A thin trail of sweat ran from his neck to his collarbone, ignored. He had barely spoken to anyone in 2 days, and then it came. A knock on the metal door. A young soldier stepped in, holding a small envelope. There was nothing special about it. No distinct scent, no glitter, no official markings. Just simple beige paper, sealed at the edges, addressed in careful handwriting. Private First Class Kim Taehyung. He didn't open it immediately. His fingers hovered for a moment, uncertain. For a long time he had hoped for a letter. From his parents, maybe. Or his sister. Or perhaps from a fan who had somehow slipped through the cracks of the mailroom. But he hadn't expected it to be him. The envelope opened with a whisper. And within seconds, everything about Taehyung changed. He didn't speak. Didn't smile. But he stood up for the first time that day. And walked out of the room. So what was inside that envelope? Taehyung, who feels like he's walking through fog right now. Jungkook's handwriting, soft and slanted, filled the single sheet of paper. And though no one has officially released the full content of that letter, several sources close to the two idols, fellow recruits who caught glimpses of Taehyung's reaction, former staff who understood the bond between them, and insiders in the mail department, have painted a picture so emotionally charged, so deeply personal, that it has shaken fans across the globe. The letter, sources say, wasn't just a message. It was a confession, a reaching hand, and a challenge. There was something in his eyes, one soldier told reporters. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was like something had just clicked, like a fire had been relit. Over the next few hours, Taehyung continued to train on his own, even helping younger recruits with their gear. He volunteered for the night guard shift. He didn't rest until well past midnight, and for the first time in weeks, his voice returned, quiet but steady. The transformation was undeniable, but the biggest surprise came days later, when the news of Jungkook's letter somehow reached a wider circle of fans, thanks to a now-deleted tweet from a former BTS staff member who had served as a liaison between the label and military personnel. The tweet simply read, "You never know what someone's going through until you see what brings them back." Jungkook's letter to Taehyung was more than a message. It was a lifeline, and Taehyung grabbed it with both hands. Within minutes, #Jungkook letter to Taehyung began trending worldwide. But it wasn't just the fans who noticed. According to military sources, Taehyung's superior officers have unofficially praised his resurgence, citing him as an example of emotional resilience under pressure. One internal memo reportedly labeled his transformation as remarkable and a morale-boosting phenomenon. So what was it truly that sparked this change? Was it guilt that Jungkook understood what he couldn't say? Was it the memory of nights spent on stages together, now mirrored by nights under camouflage and stars? Was it the quiet way Jungkook wrote, "I miss you, but I respect the silence you're in right now," that gave Taehyung the freedom to come back on his own terms? Or was there something deeper? Something both of them were not ready to say aloud. As weeks pass, the curiosity around the letter only grows. And with it, the emotional ripples continue to spread. Not just among fans, but among soldiers, officers, families. Because in a place built on order and silence, sometimes the most powerful act is not obedience, but connection. And while many are still waiting for the day Taehyung and Jungkook reunite after service, perhaps what matters more is the unspoken reunion that already happened. On paper, across distance, inside a quiet envelope, there's something about loneliness that doesn't scream, it whispers. It wraps around you like fog, silent, formless, cold. It doesn't ask permission. It settles in the bones. And for Taehyung, stationed far from the world he once knew, where music, cameras, and love from millions filled his days like air, this fog was his new reality. It wasn't the physical strain of military life that got to him. Not the cold showers. Not the grueling hours of crawling through mud and marching with 60 pounds strapped to his back. No, those things he endured. It was the stillness in between. The moments no one talks about. The ones that make time feel endless and yourself feel invisible. And in that emptiness, something inside him began to sink. Not fast. Not in some cinematic spiral. But slowly, like a ship taking on water in a quiet sea. Until that letter arrived. What did Jungkook really feel when he wrote that letter? While Taehyung was enduring long hours under the sun, Jungkook was stationed at a different base. Their schedules didn't overlap. Their routines differed. But their hearts, those perhaps, had never stopped sinking in silence, according to an unnamed insider who recently completed service in the same barracks where Jungkook was temporarily assigned. The Golden Magne wasn't exactly the joyful, high-energy soldier everyone expected either. There were days Jungkook barely spoke. He carried out his orders perfectly, but without his usual spark. He exercised hard. He trained harder. And during free time, he often sat with pen and paper. He was always writing, said the source. Not journaling, not sketching. Writing. You could tell whatever he was pouring onto that paper wasn't light. Then came the moment that changed everything. After hearing a brief comment from another recruit that Taehyung hadn't been seen during break time in days, Jungkook reportedly went silent. Not a word. He skipped dinner, sat by his bunk, and by lights out, he had written the now legendary letter. He handed it to the camp mail officer without even sealing it fully, the source added. He just whispered, "Get this to him, please." The weight of those words, "Get this to him." It was as if Jungkook already knew that what he had written wasn't a luxury. It was urgent, essential, life-saving. And now we ask, what did Jungkook know that no one else did? Back at Taehyung's base, the transformation no one saw coming. Within 24 hours of reading the letter, Taehyung had resumed training with a ferocity that startled even his drill sergeant. Not just physically but emotionally. He made an effort to laugh. He offered to carry extra equipment for weaker recruits. He began singing quietly under his breath during gear inspections, barely audible, but recognizable to those who knew the melody.